So, a lot of people in the world that I've circulated with, I served on the Judiciary B Committee and the Juvenile Justice Committees when I was in the House of Representatives in Mississippi. So, one of the issues that always comes up in criminal justice is dealing with bail. And there's a proposal that is kicked in California for zero bail in Los Angeles County primarily. And it got some attention because 12 of the cities, there's like 88 cities in Los Angeles County. 12 of those cities, primarily in the southern part. And if you know anything about Los Angeles County, which I don't know a whole lot, but I do know that the majority of the county is either in the central part of the state, which is basically LA, and then going south, right? It's not a whole lot going on in the northern part of the state, and I think that's geography or whatever. But anyway, um, there's 12 cities in Los Angeles County that have said, yeah, we don't want to be a part of the zero bail thing. So I have a guy on that may can address at least one side of the issue, if not cover both sides, but at least address one side of the issue. And his name is Jeffrey J. Clayton. Mr. Clayton is the executive director of the American Bail Coalition. He has worked as a public policy and government relations professional and also as a licensed attorney, serving a variety of clients in legal, legislative, and policy matters. Mr. Clayton also worked in government science, representing the Colorado Judicial Branch and the State Labor Department and the U.S. Department of Transportation. He is also a prior Presidential Management Fellow and finalist for the U.S. Supreme Court Fellows Program. Mr. Clayton holds a BBA from Baylor University, an MS in Public Policy from the University of Rochester, New York, and a JD from the Sturm College of Law and University of Denver. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct honor and privilege to have as a guest on this podcast, Mr. Jeffrey J. Clayton. All right, Jeff Clayton, how you doing, sir? You doing good?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing lovely, man. Glad that you are able to come on. I want to do something different with you. Normally, I try to get one quote that either relates to what the person is doing, what they might have said. But I've got two for you. So the first one, I think you said this. For richer or poor, recidivist criminals dwell at the center of our criminal justice problems. Rather than helping them maintain the status quo they currently enjoy, if we are ever to get a handle on the problem, we must do everything we can to prevent them from continuing to victimize our communities. Kind of expand on that quote for me.
Well, I think it starts with a simple fact that the U.S. Department of Justice statistics and other statistics in other towns have found that anywhere from 60 to 80% of violent crime is committed by roughly 5% of criminal defendants who do these crimes over and over and over again. And so when you want to talk about a crime problem, when you want to talk about issues of crime, that's the population that's causing the most of the damage. And so that's two sides of the coin, because it also suggests that people on the low end of the system, the one and two timers, aren't the real problem, and that's not the people that we need to attack. In other words, there is a need for reform on maybe the low end, largely because we need to focus the criminal justice system on these people that continue to slip through the cracks. And unfortunately, some of these bail policies are exactly that. It's allowing this group of who we consider to be repeat violent defendants to take advantage of bail statutes that allow them to slip through the cracks when the people we want to help, who are presumed innocent, who are first-time offenders, are helped, but unfortunately we're helping, this particular group of people as well.
Okay. Now, the other quote, before I get into that, The American Bail Coalition, who you represent, is a trade organization made up of national bail insurance companies who are responsible for underwriting criminal bail bonds throughout the United States of America. That's a true statement, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Now, here's the quote. The quote says the commercial bail industry actively defends cash bail systems that produce racially and economically unjust outcomes, high rates of pretrial incarceration, significant costs to taxpayers, and negative public consequences. The commercial bail industry traps people who cannot afford cash bail premiums in a predatory cycle of debt and incarceration in the same way that payday loan companies and other predatory lenders make a profit by taking advantage of people who need help affording the necessities of daily life. What's your response to that quote?
Well, there's a lot going on there, but let me start by saying I defend the constitutional right to bail. The constitutional right to bail pre-existed all of this era of mass incarceration. In fact, eliminating the right to bail in the federal system, the right to quote unquote cash bail, has resulted in a massive increase in mass incarceration. Expanding the use of dangerousness predictions and incorporating that into bail has led to mass incarceration. Now, to the idea that we're payday lenders, I don't think so. I think we're the reason that people don't have to use payday lenders because our bail agents are not allowed to charge interest. I don't think that we're predatory. I think we allow bail agents in those communities to serve as bail agents without having to own significant amounts of property. In other words, under the old bail system, it was go find a rich guy to act as your personal surety. Now, people in the community with insurance underwriting can level the playing field and act as personal sureties. So now, to the idea that the entire criminal justice system has racial disparities and all that sort of thing, of course it does. I think the statistics establish that. I think we know that's true. But I don't think bail is part and parcel of that. I think bail is the one area where the community can fight back against the state and say, no, we're bailing him out and you're not prosecuting him and you're not holding him in jail and we're going to not allow the state to do that. So I'd be careful incorporating bail into the rest of the system with things like sentencing and stuff like that, because I think it's different. And I think it does allow the community to fight back against the criminal justice system. And history has certainly proven that when there was cash bail in the federal system, there was a 24% incarceration rate. Now there's a 75% rate, some 40 years later when we haven't had bail.
Okay. So that leads to the issue that we're here to talk about, which is this zero bail system that has been implemented in California. And it got implemented, the start date was October 1st. Am I correct on that?
That's right. And that's in Los Angeles County.
Okay. So I'm going to read this. This is what I gathered. Now, the zero bail system, officially dubbed by the Los Angeles Superior Court as Prearrangement Release Protocols, or PARP, largely eliminates the existing cash bail system for all but the most serious of crimes. Most people arrested on suspicion on nonviolent or non-serious offenses will either be cited and released in the field or booked and released at a police or sheriff station with orders to appear in court on a specific date for arraignment once they are actually charged with a crime. Arrestees who are believed to present a heightened threat to the public or be a flight risk will be referred to a magistrate judge who will review the case and determine whether the person shall be held in custody pending arraignment or released under non-financial restrictions such as electronic monitoring. Once a person is charged and appears in court for arraignment, a judge could change or revoke the defendant's conditions. Now that's, an interpretation of it. Now, I was in reading this, the mayor of Glendora, who is representing one of the 12 cities that's filing a legal case or injunction, I guess, to stop this from going into effect. Am I correct on that?
That's right. They are.
Okay. And is your organization assisting them in that lawsuit?
No, but I think I can talk about why I think it's important, but we would support that sort of in the abstract without, getting into the court case.
I got you. Okay. Yeah, I think that's important for listeners to know because sometimes whether you're doing an amicus curiae brief or whatever, they need to know the involvement. So you're basically supporting the lawsuit, but you're not actively engaged in the lawsuit.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So the mayor of Glendora said that the bail schedule will result in significant increase in criminals released back into the community after their arrest. It says under the new policy, individuals charged with felonies including automobile theft, organized retail theft, and hit and runs with personal injury are now eligible for book and release. Other charges that now qualify for zero bail, including some DUIs, reckless driving with bodily injury, and misdemeanor level assaults. Okay, so um, let me ask, I guess I can ask the question based off of that. Would you say that this movement now is a response to the 2021 California Supreme Court ruling that stated people cannot be detained simply because they cannot afford to pay cash bail?
It is and it isn't. It is in part. And I think really what's going on in Los Angeles is you have two lawsuits. So you have the city of Glendale and the other cities suing to say you can't do this or you shouldn't do this zero bail. And then you have an activist group called the Civil Rights Corps suing the judges saying you have to do this bail schedule. So the judges are in this pickle where the cities don't want them to, and the activists in suing and the attorney general is not defending California state law to say that the bail schedule is unconstitutional, which a judge held. So this judge is in the middle trying to determine what's going on. And what they did is they just took the pandemic schedule and took these crimes and threw them off the schedule and said, these people are going to get out for free. Is that going to increase crime? It could, because some people are going to slip through the cracks. The reality is this is a small level of crimes in Los Angeles County. Almost all misdemeanors get out for free anyway right now. And also this is pre-arraignment, as you noted in the opening comments, which means before they see a judge, it's automatic. Once they see a judge, the judge can jack up the bails, do whatever they want with the bails. And so we're talking about a limited number of cases and a limited number of circumstances. And maybe that's 5 to 10% of cases. Maybe some percentage of that's going to slip through the cracks and people are going to be re-victimized. So I wouldn't say it's an elimination of money bail. It's being overstated by the activist groups as to what it is. Is it going to cause enough problems to cause these cities and people getting repeat retail theft and having their cars broken into and maybe a few extra DUI drivers driving around? I think it will. And I think that's what the fights are ultimately going to be over, is whether that should be automatic or whether they should have to post bail until they see a judge, and whether the judge should relieve them of the burden of having to post bail and give them a PR bond. In other words, should we have judges look at this or should we have it be automatic? I think that's what will ultimately it will come down to.
Okay. So the 12 cities were citing a study done in Yolo County, which is, I think, Davis, California. It's close to
Right.
Sacramento, where it is.
Absolutely.
So that study said that there was like 71% of the people who were arrested were repeat offenders, right? Well, let me look at that. Let me make sure I read that right. It showed that 71% of the individuals who were arrested were rearrested during the period from April 2020 through June 1st, 2021, when zero bail policies were in effect. It also revealed that 29% of those who were rearrested were arrested for violent crimes. Now, that's what those 12 cities presented as their argument why they're against it. But now the Judicial Council of California, which is, I guess, the policy-making body for the courts in the state, is that an accurate description of them?
Yeah, and the administrative overseeing of the entire court system in California.
Okay. They released a report finding that a risk-based, zero bail system actually led to increased public safety, with a 5.8% drop in people being rearrested for misdemeanors and a 2.4% decrease in people being rearrested for felonies. So maybe in Davis, California, a lot of people that are getting arrested are coming back. But according to the Judicial Council of California, they're saying statewide it's actually been a decrease. What is your organization's viewpoint on recidivism as far as what you're seeing with zero bail policies that have been implemented so far?
Well, I'll just respond to that Los Angeles study that you're talking about. I think the jury's out in Los Angeles County. I don't think we know. I think, one, using rearrest is not a good proxy for new crimes. That just means you got picked up for something. That doesn't mean you committed a new crime within what time period. So I don't think we know. I think that Yolo study, maybe that shows something in Yolo County. But like you said, in Los Angeles County, do we know that zero bail has substantially increased recidivism, or is this happening at kind of a smaller level than maybe we thought? And I think the answer is we don't know. I don't think the pandemic is a good example because I don't think policing was in full force during that time period. And I think that's I think we can dismiss that data that the Judicial Council presents as we don't know. It's not that it decreased recidivism or it's increased. I think the jury, like I said, is out in Los Angeles. Other states and jurisdictions, we've seen that when you restrict judicial discretion to set bail, that it does increase recidivism. Primarily, we saw that in New York. We've seen that in other jurisdictions. And really what it is repeat defendants getting a zero bail and judges not being able to do a bail on those. And some states like New York over time, over three different iterations of reforming their bail reform, have built-in exceptions for repeat criminality. And like I said, it just comes back to that as we started the show out, which is policies that do allow for exceptions for repeat criminalities will help the bail reform work better, and ones that don't will allow those repeat criminals to continue to shoplift and do all their things that they're doing. And, it doesn't matter what crime you commit. After you've done it 10 times, as a society, we've got to say it's a problem. And that's really what we've come down to here, is whether it's possessing guns or doing this or that, whether it's a low level, high level, does it really matter? No, they're repeat scofflaws. And that's really what it comes down to and what criminal justice policies need to target.
So I'm going to ask you this. So I used to be a legislator in Mississippi. So in Mississippi, there's a law that if you are a repeat offender for shoplifting, I can't remember, I want to say it's 3 times, then the third time it's automatically elevated to a felony. So is it a similar situation in California for some of the misdemeanor crimes that if you commit those repeatedly, then it gets elevated to a felony status?
Correct. That's just really just violent crimes, is really in California, and primarily not when it concerns misdemeanors. And I will speak to sort of these 3 strikes and you're out sentencing and all that kind of policies. The thing to criminal deterrence, it doesn't matter. It has to be, we catch them swiftly and we punish them. And that's it. It doesn't matter if it's 3 years, 2 years, 30 days. You know what I mean? That's what deters crime, is getting ensnared and that the system's swift and it works. And so we don't need 3 strikes and you're out to have an effective criminal justice system. And I think the New York system pre-bail reform showed that. We can have low incarceration. We enforce the law. Yeah, you get dinged and it's going to happen. It's going to happen over and over. If you do this, the system's going to get back at you. But we don't need to go crazy and give somebody 20 years to do that. It's just, if you do it, you're going to get caught. You're going to get punished. That's what we need to go back to. And that can mean lower sentences and lower incarceration policies. But that's what I'm talking about, is a refocus on recidivists and recidivist criminals as the problem. And unfortunately, we've gotten away from that and said, we've talking about all these other things we need to fix, and we've gotten away from that focus.
So what's the difference between this proposal that's happening now in Los Angeles County and the one that was rejected by California voters in the 2020 California Proposition 25?
Well, the Prop 25 and what was Senate Bill 10 was a complete overhaul of the system to go to what would have been a risk-based system using a risk assessment computer to put people in categories of, we think these should be detained and these should be released for free. In other words, we would take bail out of the equation and having, me act as your surety or having a bail agent and all, having to secure your release and all that. We would throw that out and just operate a system purely based on detention or release for free. And that's kind of what the federal system did. I'd say what really got them in that system and what the voters really did not like was the risk assessment algorithm. It just, and civil rights groups were opposing that portion of it. And I just think, while people, maybe there was some movement that we wanted to have a system without bail, that we could come up with some other alternate system without bail. That was the linchpin that really destroyed the system, was that these risk computers really, use all this historical data, and there were a lot of civil rights groups finding that there were racial biases sort of permanently baked into those. And I don't know about that. My uh, argument was I just don't think it was fundamentally a fair way to decide bail, because it based it on future predictions of what somebody's going to do, whereas the American system of justice is based on what you have done. So it just really destroyed the presumption of innocence. But public didn't like it, and that effort went down by double digits from the voters.
And so the difference, so the algorithm was the difference between those, what's currently being presented now and what the proposition was.
Yeah, and in this Los Angeles County example, like I said, it's really pre-arraignment bail. They're just picking and choosing some things they don't want bail for, versus the wholesale overhauling the system and saying there's going to be no bail for anything. And then we'll tell prosecutors, you want to file for detention or not, and that's it. That's the bail system that we have. And so that would be sort of a more radical version of what's going on here. This is sort of a smaller version of that in a more limited context based on the crimes that we pick and choose and put in on this bail schedule or not, as zero bails.
And that algorithm, was that the issue that the Koch brothers, when they were pushing criminal justice reform, was that the issue they were pushing? The risk-based algorithms?
They certainly were for that. And I think, the Laura and John Arnold Foundation, which is now Arnold Ventures, their algorithm is running the New Jersey system right now. And that was the solution for 5 years. I mean, that really was it. I was at a conference just last week, and one of the attorneys who's been working in bail for a long time said, Jeff, 5 years ago, all we were talking about was the algorithm. All we were talking about was risk assessment was the solution. And now we don't hear that at all. And yet you still have all these municipalities and counties and even whole states sneaking around running the algorithms. And, I would argue that the activist community has let them off the hook. Like, come on, if you didn't like these things, like, you defeated the California referendum, that was good. But guess what? Most of the large counties in California are still using these things. And a lot of large jurisdictions around the country are still using these things. So, we might want to look into that and not let that issue go away. But certainly that is not a part of the conversation anymore, at least right now.
So is that the difference between California? Because the two I would kind of picked out was New Jersey and Alaska, right? And in New Jersey, they make the argument that their pretrial population has decreased by 20%, and there's been a decrease in overall crime. I couldn't get any stats from Alaska, but the assessment piece is what would be different between what is being proposed in Los Angeles County and what is happening in New Jersey.
I think that's right. And I think David Slayton, who's the court administrator in Los Angeles County, who's from Texas and was the court administrator for the state of Texas, is a big proponent of risk assessment algorithms, developed one in Texas, and has said publicly that they're going to start using it now. So I think it will come in, it will play a part, and I think people should be concerned about that, because whether you get out of jail or not in Los Angeles County could hinge on, your age at first arrest, which is what the number one factor in all these algorithms is what age you got arrested at, not what age you got convicted at. So if you were a youthful criminal or guy and you got ensnared, you're the wrong place at the wrong time, that has a permanent effect on you. So, what effect do these algorithms have? People aren't really paying attention anymore, unfortunately.
All right, so I'm gonna throw this scenario at you. Now, I've been in law enforcement in 2 different states. So this story I'm going to tell is based off experience here. So, what about the 80-year-old homeless man arrested for criminal trespass in Atlanta? The bond for that is $2,500, which means that an 80-year-old homeless man has to come up with $250 to get out. He doesn't have it. Then he ends up at the hospital being treated for ailments connected to the fact that he is homeless at the cost of the taxpayers. And part of that cost is having a deputy like me sitting on him for 8 hours at a time. Wouldn't it be cheaper on the taxpayers if zero bail was in effect for that particular case?
I think so. I mean, we call that sleeping on the park bench bails. And of course, with the ACLU of Colorado, I passed legislation, 4 or 5 years ago to get at that, to say certain low-level municipal offenses, we aren't going to bother. And, if you want to say you're a reformer, it's easy to say, which is, we don't have time for this stuff. And that is the truth right now. Law enforcement is so overburdened, we don't have time for this stuff. And it is a mental health issue. And it is, all these homeless populations, like look at my hometown of Denver, look at what's going on. It's like, yeah, they're finally trying to get these people some help and getting them out of there and saying, hey, you do have to move and you do have to get services and you do have to have a house and all this sort of thing. That's good. But, this has been going on for a long time. And unfortunately, I think, maybe things are starting to turn around a little bit.
All right. So I'm going to go over some points, some positions that your organization has taken. And just real quickly, and just ask the question, would zero bail help on that? The American Bail Coalition stands strongly against the expansion of general preventative detention policies. Wouldn't zero bail help that out?
Yeah, I don't think zero bail really plays into that much, except for the fact that what we've seen over time is the more that the system argues for free release, the more there is more crime. And then the more the argument is, we need the power of detention. So I think zero bail policies will feed the argument that we need to change the California Constitution to detain people. And I don't think that's good. I think the system of posting bails and non-posting bails is a better system than detention or no detention. And I think history has proven that.
Okay, because it was saying that the California Committee to Revise the Penal Code studied the issue of eliminating bail schedules and decided to keep them because then judges would have to set bail on every case. And that would delay things to the point where any gains would be lost by everyone waiting in jail for a bail to be set in open court in every case.
Yeah, and the Penal Code Committee got mad at me for capturing the recommendation that way and said, no, we do think we should get rid of them. We just don't know how to get rid of them. And that's what it comes down to. There is no way to get rid of them. The way to get rid of them is to go to the Pennsylvania model, which is really to have judges set bail in all these cases. And in America, that is what should happen. Because if you're facing pretrial incarceration in South Carolina for 2 years, for example, the average time to dispo a felony. So if you're going to sit in jail for 2 years, you should see a judge on that. If you're going to sit in jail for an extra night, you should see a judge on that. And this is America. Your freedom is at stake. That's my position. And so to have these interim solutions like a bail schedule and preset bails and all this, we really don't need it. We need a robust judiciary with attorneys on both sides. Come in, let's have an argument, let's get it done, and let's move on. And that is, unfortunately, we can't get there. Penal Code Committee recommended we get there, that we have 48-hour reviews of these in California. Legislation was introduced, and the Appropriations Committee said we can't afford it. So that's why we're stuck here, which is we don't have enough judges to hear all these and to have individualized consideration in all of them. And if we did, we wouldn't be here. But that's what we should be doing, is just saying, yeah, let's hear the homeless guy. Let's not just put him on a bail schedule and let the chips fall where they may.
Okay. So your organization believes that all criminal defendants who remain in custody should have a right to a second de novo bail hearing if they remain in custody for more than 10 days after arrest, and if there is a change in circumstances warranting additional hearing. Would this zero bail policy help fulfill that?
Not really, because there's going to be no pressure to do the hearings at all, really, under this system. We're not going to get there, and that's going to go away. I think the hearings need to happen faster. The de novo hearing gets me in trouble with a lot of judges and legislators because it means you get to do it over again. But again, we're talking about custody. That's the key juncture in a critical case, is whether you stay in jail or not. We all know that. So let's take it seriously. If that's the point in time, then it's conviction, right? Then it's sentencing. Those are the 3 points in a criminal case. Let's call it what it is. Let's put the time and energy into getting it right.
And then your organization believes all deposits should be returned to the defendant upon conviction unless a prosecutor makes a showing by a preponderance of the evidence that the keeping of the funds is necessary to serve a legitimate and important state purpose. How would zero bail, would it help or hurt that particular stance?
Well, it would probably I don't think it would have much of an impact on that because, people wouldn't be posting bails in those cases. The argument there is that you don't want the court system to use bail as a collections mechanism to say, oh, we're just going to intercept all this bail as a routine basis. The other thing that you don't want is, let's say you're in jail. You don't want me to say, I don't want to post your bail because I'm worried that the state is going to keep it if you plead guilty. You want me to post a bail to say, you have told me, and we're going to guarantee that you're going to show up and answer to the charges. You're going to go to all your court hearings. That's what you want me to do. You don't want me thinking about whether you're going to plead guilty and what's going to happen to my money. You want me to know I'm going to get my money back if I put up for you, you go to court. That's what you want. And when you start allowing the state to keep it as a routine basis, you take that whole question of appearance out of the equation, and that's the whole point in the first place.
So, in a nutshell, right, what's happening in Los Angeles County is the elected officials there and the judicial system there is trying to figure out a way to decrease the population in the county jail, right? And so their idea is that, well, if we can get officers to, because see, in Georgia, and I have to explain this to people, a traffic ticket is a criminal offense in the state of Georgia. So when the officer writes you a ticket, you're under arrest at that point. And when you sign the ticket and say you're going to show up in court, that's your bond to drive home, right?
Right.
So what it sounds like to me is that in Los Angeles, there's going to be certain crimes where the officer basically does that. They give you a field release and let you go, and then you got to show up to court. And then, but there's certain things like, murder, rape, whatever, what we call the more serious, more heinous crimes. They're going to arrest you and put you in jail, and then you got to go through the process. What is the biggest concern you have as an organization dealing with bail? Because the cynics are going to say, and I use that quote, that's why I threw it out. The cynics are going to say, well, you just want people to have to post bail so your folks can make money, right? But what is your serious concern as an organization that plays a vital constitutional role? Because bail falls under the Constitution. What is your concern about a policy that's like, all right, with certain offenses, because we're in agreement, like the homeless guy shouldn't even be in jail. We're in agreement of that. But, let's just say that it's accurate and say that a person that does a hit and run, right? You allow them to go home. What is your concern about people like that being given a field release before they have to go to court?
Well, I think here what we're talking about is people the officers think they should arrest and they need to arrest that then get a zero bail that under the old system would have a bail set. In other words, those people are going to get an automatic free release that wouldn't have. Now, is that everybody? No. As we learned from the Glendale press release, that's a small group of people. So the concern is that they will learn that system exists and that they will engage in repeat behavior. And really, I think the biggest concern is going to be retail theft. Yesterday was National Retail Theft Prevention Day, and you had Home Depot and all these retailers out saying, hey, we need to do something about this. We need to do something about this. Well, I think this is going to go precisely contrary to what they want to do. And again, it comes down to exactly what we were talking about earlier. Do you need a straight three strikes law? Do you need to give people the death penalty on shoplifting? No, but you need to make sure that if they do it, they get caught and that there's a penalty. And if we can continue that going, that's going to have an impact. And bail is part of that. When they get down to the courthouse, guess what? What is the bail for shoplifting on the 29th time? We got to go see the judge to find out. There's no automatic free release on the 30th time, the 31st time, and the 136th time, like we saw in New York. That's the big problem here. And so it's not that the whole criminal justice system is going to get flushed down the toilet and there's going to be a parade of horribles. It's going to be that there's isolated criminal activity that's going to increase at a large level on some of these things that we're really concerned about right now. Especially on the day after National Retail National Retail Crime Prevention Theft Day.
All right. So last question, and it falls in line of your answer. So we have seen in some major cities, Atlanta, Chicago, LA, I'm sure, other places, where you'll see a group of kids go in, bum rush a store like a Gap or something like that, go in and steal a bunch of stuff, run right back out. So under this zero bail policy, if a police officer, if this happened in Los Angeles, a police officer just happens to see these group of kids and they're able to arrest them, under this policy, they'll basically do a field release with them. And what your concern is that if these kids understand, well, shoot, you know, it's like they're gonna arrest, they're gonna give us release, that you think they'll get together and try to hit up as many stores as they can before they actually have to account for the crime that they were caught doing.
Yeah, and Home Depot and some of the others were pointing out that there are now roving gangs that go from state to state because they know they can do this. So they'll just go hit a state for a couple of days, move on. And the odds that they'll get prosecuted under that scenario are very limited because even though they have surveillance tapes and stuff, they're not going to find somebody in Atlanta who shoplifts in San Francisco and only does it like 3 or 4 times in a quick strategic strike. So this is the problem. I mean, this is definitely a problem. And I think this is just going to send the signal that you're not going to get arrested. They're not going to take you in. You're not going to get jammed up in doing this, and that's going to be the problem. My dad was a cop in the 70s, and he goes, we never really cared what happened post prosecution because the point of policing is to keep the peace. That people don't want to go do these crimes because they don't want to get arrested. Now, in the 70s, that meant getting roughed up on the way to jail. But these days, you don't want to get arrested. You don't have to go through the process because the process is uncertain. We could be in jail for a while. We don't know how long we're going to be in jail. We don't know what the judge is going to do. We're taking all that out of the equation when we say you're getting out for free, no matter how many times you do it on this list of charges. We're just doing that. And criminal suspects have told us over the years that they can figure that out. And that's what's going to happen here, I think.
All right. So, Jeffrey Clayton, I am going to give you the authority to fix the criminal justice system. And here's the keys. What's the first thing that you're going to do to address it, whether it's dealing with your bailiwick of bail or just what would you do if you were given those keys to fix the criminal justice system? What would be the first thing on your list?
First thing on my list would be violent repeat criminals. I think we're giving them a free pass under many of these policies. My hometown of Denver, if you're disabled as a prior felon from having a firearm, the judges are giving you a $1 bail and cutting you loose. Like, that's just not acceptable. We're having mass shooting up in Maine. We're talking about gun control. Well, we got criminals running on the streets, killing 12 people over a month, and we're not saying anything about that. There's no protests. There's no calls to Congress. Come on, people. We're allowing repeat violent criminals to continue to do their crimes in this country. Second thing I'm going to do, we talk a lot about, racial justice and racial equity is let's survey the victims of crime and what their needs are in these communities, and let's police that way. Let's protect the communities that want the protecting in the way they want the protecting. And so I think we completely reorient policing in that respect by protecting the victims of crime in the communities from those criminals that are going after them. And the third thing is I think we got to get a handle on this organized retail theft. I do think that is a problem. Billions and billions and billions of dollars are being left. Maybe that's a change in message. Maybe that's people just realizing that, hey, stealing is wrong and we shouldn't do it because it costs everybody. I don't know what the message is these days to get people onto the idea that, stealing isn't free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. That's an old saying in economics that doesn't play on, Twitter or X and TikTok and all that. But whatever it does, we need to figure it out and convince people that stealing is wrong and we need to stop it because it's bad for the economy. It's bad for everything. So, and then I think number 4 is crime prevention. We know when repeat criminals get into the system, they don't get out. They go on to a life of crime. We've got to stop them from getting in the first place. And there's plenty of available opportunities to do that. We're just not putting our money where our mouth is on crime prevention.
All right, Jeff, if people want to get more information about you or the American Bail Coalition, how do they do that?
ambailcoalition.org or follow us on X or see us on Facebook.
All right. Well, Jeffrey Clayton, I appreciate you taking the time out and wanting to come on this podcast and talk about this issue and at least present your side of it. I think it's based on the questions I was trying to formulate, this is really a complicated thing. I was intrigued by it because of what I saw, like on the documentary 13th, and how it talked about that bail reform was supposed to be one of the big issues, but it kind of made it seem like it was a different form of incarceration, like they were guiding people toward electronic bracelets as opposed to being incarcerated, but they were still in the system, right? So when I got the call to say, "Hey, Jeff wants to come on your show and talk about it," I said, "Great, let's have this discussion." So hopefully we can get you back on and maybe explore this a little more if possible.
Yeah, it's a complicated topic, and as they say, there's a lot of hills to die on when you're talking bail and bail reform.
All right, all right, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Clayton, and thanks again for coming on, my man. And we'll catch y'all on the other side.